He walked into that hearing thinking it would be routine, until Jasmine Crockett read one line out loud that made Kash Patel lose control in front of the entire country. Nobody expected anything special that morning. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m., sharp inside room 2141 of the Rayburn House office building in Washington, D.C. A Wednesday, overcast skies, a light drizzle outside, the kind of day that made everything feel a little heavier. Staffers moved briskly in the hallway, carrying coffee cups and stacks of folders. Reporters stood behind velvet ropes, adjusting their earpieces. Inside, the committee members began to trickle in, most wearing that expression of tired routine. Half focused, half waiting for the day to be over. Representative Jasmine Crockett walked in quietly, reviewing notes on a slim legal pad. Her team had prepped for days, double-checked citations, and organized documents with precision. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her eyes did all the talking. Her aide, a short woman, in a dark green suit named Brenda Moreno, whispered a final update before taking her seat behind her. A few feet away, Kash Patel sat at the witness table. Patel looked relaxed. His jacket was perfectly tailored, his tie a shade too bold for the room. He leaned back in his chair, chatting casually with his attorney, smirking at something said. Off mic. On the desk before him, his nameplate gleamed under the LED lights. As people settled in, cameras from C-SPAN and several other news outlets adjusted focus. Microphones blinked red. Chairs creaked. There was that charged silence before things officially began. The kind you only notice when you're looking for it. Chairman DuPont opened the floor, running through the expected agenda. Patel was here to answer questions about internal communications during a high-profile intelligence review that had turned heads last year. Nothing explosive on the schedule, just an appearance to clarify inconsistencies from a prior testimony, or so everyone thought. Jasmine sat quietly, pen in hand. She wasn't looking at Patel. She was watching his lawyer. The first few exchanges were standard, dates, timelines, procedural, clarifications. Patel answered with confidence, speaking in clipped, lawyer-approved phrases. Every word sounded rehearsed. Crockett's turn came about 30 minutes in. The chairman gave a short nod in her direction, and she adjusted her mic. Mr. Patel, she said, her tone even, in your last appearance before this committee, you testified that you had no written communication with Mr. Devlin regarding the March 14th briefing, correct? Patel glanced sideways. That's correct, he replied, nodding once. I believe that's what I stated. Jasmine didn't look up from her notes. She reached down, flipped a tab, and slowly pulled a paper from a small folder. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't highlighted. Just plain cold ink on white paper. I'm entering into the record a memo dated March 13th, she said, addressed from your personal email to Mr. Devlin's private account. It references, verbatim, details of that very same March 14th briefing. For a second you could hear someone shift in their chair behind the witness row. Patel blinked. That's not possible, he said flatly. That email must be misattributed. But Jasmine kept reading, quoting directly. Every line hit like a subtle jab. The email was detailed, time-stamped, and CC'd to 2 other staffers. Patel's signature was at the bottom. Brenda Moreno, behind Jasmine, kept her eyes on Patel's attorney. He had leaned forward, his jaw slightly clenched. Chairman DuPont interrupted, asking for clarification. Patel leaned toward his mic, stumbling a little, trying to reframe the question. But his rhythm was broken. Crockett hadn't raised her voice once. She didn't need to. Every word had weight. In the hallway, a young intern watching from a screen in room 2142 muttered, "Yo, is she about to cook this man?" Back inside the chamber, Patel scratched his neck. The lighting suddenly felt a little too bright. Jasmine placed the email down in front of her and looked up for the first time. "I'll move to my next question," she said. "But this is just one of several discrepancies we've identified." But before she could continue, Patel raised his hand, his voice firmer this time. Something had clearly shifted in his tone. Kash Patel's hand hovered for just a second. His eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on the cameras, then back to Jasmine. "With all due respect, Representative," he said, the word respect laced with irritation. "That email doesn't reflect what actually happened. There's context you're missing." Crockett didn't blink. "Then perhaps you can provide that context now," she said, turning the page in her folder with slow, deliberate calm. Patel leaned closer to his mic. "If someone on my team sent that draft and it was misattributed to me, you signed it." Crockett cut in, still calm. "The signature line matches 3. Others we've archived from the same address, same font, same metadata. Would you like me to read those into the record as well?" A murmur moved through the gallery. For the first time, Patel looked uncertain. His jaw tightened and he shifted in his seat. "I don't recall signing that," he said quickly. "Good thing we don't rely on memory alone," Jasmine replied. Patel opened his mouth again, but his attorney placed a firm hand on his arm under the table. He didn't say a word, just a slight squeeze, a silent warning. "Stop talking." Brenda passed Jasmine another paper, and this time it was printed in color. "This is a screenshot of your encrypted text exchange with Mr. Devlin," she said, raising the document slightly. "The day after the memo, you referred to it directly. Quote, that memo's locked clean and off the radar, just like we said. Would you like to explain what that means?" Patel laughed once, short, nervous. "You're seriously bringing screenshots now?" Jasmine's face didn't move. "Do you dispute the content?" "No, I'm saying you're trying to make a political spectacle out of private, informal back-and-forths. They were about a federal intelligence briefing," she said plainly, "not a lunch order." The room tensed. Even the committee members who had been half-scrolling on their phones were now locked in. Chairman DuPont adjusted his glasses and glanced toward Patel's lawyer, who still hadn't spoken. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Patel, you may answer the question or invoke your Fifth Amendment rights, but I'll remind you, this committee takes perjury seriously." The word perjury sat in the air like smoke after a spark. Patel clenched, his jaw. "There's no perjury," he said through gritted teeth. "This is a smear job, and frankly, I'm not going to sit here while—" "You're not sitting here because we want to play games," Jasmine said, her tone flat. "You're here because something doesn't add up and Americans deserve clarity." Her words cut clean, measured, not aggressive. Patel glanced at the chairman, then down at the table. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something quickly. Patel listened, lips tight, cameras caught every second. The image, Jasmine seated, composed, and direct, while Patel sat hunched forward, visibly sweating, was already being clipped by interns in the media room upstairs. Meanwhile, outside the hearing chamber, 3 reporters huddled around a monitor. "Is that real?" one asked, pointing at the timestamp. "It checks out," another said, already texting an editor. "That memo wasn't even part of Discovery. Someone must have leaked it." Inside the hearing, Patel finally spoke again. "There's no conspiracy here," he said sharply. "The memo was just a draft. It didn't go anywhere." "Then why did you lie under oath about its existence?" Crockett asked, leaning slightly forward. Patel's lawyer jumped in this time, objecting to the characterization that assumes facts, not in evidence. "This isn't a courtroom," Jasmine replied, never taking her eyes off Patel, "and the facts are right in front of us." Silence. One of the microphones made a tiny popping sound. Someone coughed in the back. "You knew this wasn't going to stay hidden forever," she added, her voice a notch softer. You just didn't think anyone was going to check." But before anyone could respond, Chairman DuPont asked for a brief recess, and that's when the real panic started behind closed doors. As soon as Chairman DuPont called the recess, Patel shot up from his seat. He didn't wait for his lawyer. He didn't wait for the cameras to cut. He yanked his mic off his lapel and muttered something to himself before storming toward a back room used for witness consultations. His lawyer followed, whispering sharply. The camera stayed wide, catching just a glimpse of Patel's face as he passed behind the chairwoman's desk, tense, red, and shaken. Inside the private consultation room, the door clicked shut. No audio, no cameras. But according to two aides standing just outside, Patel's voice was loud enough to cut through the walls. "What the hell is going on out there?" he snapped. "How did she even get that memo? That wasn't supposed to be on the record. It was buried. I know it was buried." His attorney didn't answer at first. He flipped open his laptop and pulled up an internal server access log. "Someone gave it to her," he said finally, tapping a line of code. "This isn't public domain. This came from someone close." "You think Devlin flipped?" "I think it doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you need to shut it down before she brings out whatever's next." Back inside the hearing room, Jasmine stayed seated. She hadn't looked at her phone once. Brenda leaned close. "That got him rattled," she whispered. Jasmine nodded slightly. "He's hiding something bigger." Across the chamber, staffers and members chatted in low voices. The hearing wasn't even halfway through, and already every major political reporter in the building was watching this feed. The hashtag Patel's Crockett started trending within minutes. News anchors were scrambling to get live analysis on air. Phones buzzed. TikTok clips had already been posted with dramatic captions and freeze frames of Patel's stunned reaction. 15 minutes later, the committee reconvened. Patel walked back in, slower this time. He looked like someone who'd just come out of a bad meeting, still composed, but the edge was gone. Jasmine barely looked up. "Mr. Patel," she began, "let's go back to your comments earlier about the memo being a draft. You said it didn't go anywhere. But this is a reply from Mr. Devlin 2 hours after receiving your message. He says, and I quote, 'Understood. I'll make sure the committee never sees this version.'" Patel glanced at his lawyer, who stayed still. He inhaled slowly. "That doesn't prove intent," he said. "It's a misinterpretation of intent is something juries debate," she said. "We're asking what happened, and that reply doesn't exactly scream transparency." Patel's voice cracked slightly. "This is all taken out of context." "You keep saying that," Jasmine said, "but you haven't offered a single example of what the real context is." The audience behind the press table murmured. Chairman DuPont gave a quick rap of the gavel. Patel's eyes narrowed. "You're not asking questions. You're trying to paint a picture. You're staging a performance for your base." Jasmine raised her eyebrows. "Is that your final answer?" "I'm saying this is political theater." That word theater got a reaction. Chairman DuPont leaned forward. "Mr. Patel, please stick to the facts being presented." Patel ignored him. "You people have already decided what you want to hear. You think you can drag me through the mud because it plays well in headlines. I've worked with 2 administrations. I've been in more classified briefings than anyone in this room. You think a couple of emails and texts mean you've got me cornered?" For the first time, Jasmine set her papers down. "No," she said slowly. "It's not the emails that cornered you. It's your words. On the record, on camera, repeatedly. If you were transparent from the start, none of this would matter." Her voice didn't rise, but the tension in the room did. You could feel it in the way Patel's hand clenched the edge of the table, in the way Chairman DuPont shifted in his seat. "I've had enough of this," Patel said suddenly, louder than before. "You've clearly made up your mind, and I'm not going to sit here while you cherry-pick private conversations for the sake of your own narrative." He stood again, Not storming this time, just cold, deliberate. His lawyer followed. The chairman called for order, reminding Patel he was under obligation to remain until dismissed. But Patel kept walking, right out of the room. But as he left, one of Jasmine's aides quietly slid a new folder across the table, and when she opened it, the entire hearing took a darker turn. The moment Kash Patel walked out, the committee room fell into a strange kind of silence. Not tense, not relaxed, just confused. He wasn't technically allowed to leave. The chairman had just said so, yet there he was, coat over his shoulder, pushing through the exit like it was a bad podcast he didn't want to finish. For about 5 seconds, no one moved. Then a flurry of motion. Staffers whispered. Reporters reached for their phones. Someone from NPR stepped out to call the press desk. A local news anchor from Sacramento was already doing a live hit from the hallway with one AirPod in and her heels off. Jasmine didn't say anything. She just leaned back in her chair and picked up the new folder Brenda had slipped over. It was thin, only 4 pages, but her eyes didn't move for a full minute. When she looked up, her face had changed. Still calm, still composed. But there was something tighter in the jaw. Something resolved. Chairman DuPont cleared his throat. Given Mr. Patel's departure, we'll recess briefly while the council determines how to proceed. The cameras were still rolling. They caught everything. Patel's exit. The murmur of confusion. Jasmine's reaction. And it all went online in seconds. Not minutes, seconds. By the time the committee members stepped out for recess, Twitter was on fire. Hashtags were multiplying. Patel's storm out. Crockett receipts. A hearing gone sideways. A split screen of Patel walking out. And Jasmine calmly flipping her folder had already gone viral. At a Starbucks on 4th in Madison in Seattle, 2 college students stopped scrolling on their phones at the same time. "Yo," one said, holding out her screen. "Look at this." Who walks out of a congressional hearing mid-question? Did she just pull out more documents? She's got something, man. Look at her face. At a gas station in Flagstaff, Arizona, a man in a hoodie replayed the clip on loop while pumping gas. By then, even conservative commentators were chiming in. Some called it a setup. Others said Patel had lost his cool and confirmed everything. By walking out, news cycles move fast, but this was a wildfire. Back in the hearing room, Jasmine stood quietly with Brenda and another aide, a younger guy named Derek Flores, who had a look on his face like someone was about to press the big red button. "I don't want to release it unless he comes back," Jasmine said, tapping the folder with her index finger. "But if he doesn't, we go." Brenda nodded. "He will. His lawyer's too smart to let him hang himself like that. He already has." 10 minutes passed, then 20. In that time, 2 different networks switched to live coverage of the hearing. Not the usual C-SPAN feed. No, prime time, cable, major anchor desks, analysts explaining the significance, talking heads speculating on the leak. One legal analyst in Boston said flatly, "If what Representative Crockett has is real, Patel might need more than a lawyer. He might need a deal." Inside the hallway just outside room 2141, Patel's attorney was pacing. 2 assistants flanked him, one on the phone, one tapping furiously at a laptop. "He has to come back," the attorney muttered. "He walks out like that on live TV. It's bad enough. But if she's got more, he needs to get ahead of it. Where is he now?" "Waiting in a car 2 blocks away, says he needs a minute." "He doesn't have a minute," the assistant snapped, but it was already too late. Jasmine Crockett returned to the table, signaled to the chairman, and asked to re-enter the hearing into official session. Patel's seat remained empty. She didn't waste time. "We've confirmed the contents of this next document with both legal staff and 2 independent cybersecurity analysts. It's an internal memo from Mr. Patel's personal email server, dated March 16th. The subject line reads, Deconfliction plan. Avoid traceable channels. She let that hang. Brenda quietly pulled up the memo on a digital screen behind her. Let the record show, Jasmine continued. This memo outlines strategies to avoid FOIA exposure, including the use of burner phones, encrypted apps, and alternate scheduling protocols meant to bypass calendar tracking. She turned toward the empty chair. This was authored 2 days after Mr. Patel testified that no such tactics were ever used. Silence. Outside the building, protesters had started gathering. Not because they planned to, but because it was happening live. And people reacted. But even then, they didn't know Jasmine was still holding back the most explosive piece, the one she saved for last. 15 minutes after Jasmine revealed the deconfliction plan, Kash Patel returned. He didn't storm this time, no theatrics, just a quiet entrance through the side door. His coat is still off, his expression hollowed out. No smirk, no snide remarks, just the look of someone who had been told behind closed doors that the story had already left his hands and was now in the court of public opinion. The hearing resumed. Chairman DuPont didn't bother with pleasantries. Mr. Patel, he said, the committee has reviewed additional materials submitted during your absence. You may respond. Patel took a slow breath. I'd like to clarify a few things, he said, voice lower now. Some of the language in those documents was never intended to be taken literally. Jasmine looked up. So you're saying it was a metaphor? He hesitated. I'm saying people in my position sometimes speak informally when outlining risk management. Burner phones, she asked, tone flat. Encrypted scheduling systems to avoid discovery. It's not what it sounds like. You said earlier that there were no written communications at all. Patel turned to his lawyer. Do I have to keep answering questions framed like that? His lawyer didn't say a word. Chairman DuPont answered instead. Yes, you're under oath, Mr. Patel. And that's when something broke. Maybe not visibly, but something shifted in Patel's posture. He leaned in toward the mic. Not aggressively, not performatively, just tired. The words came out slower now, less polished. I was following a playbook, he said. One we all understood. One that worked. A ripple moved through the room. Jasmine's fingers tensed around her pen. And who is we, Mr. Patel? She asked. Patel didn't respond right away. Brenda looked toward Jasmine, then toward the committee. They all knew it. He was seconds from naming someone. The policy team, he said finally. At least 5 of us. And were you instructed to keep those communications off the record? His voice dropped. Yes. By whom? He shook his head slightly. I'd rather not say here. Jasmine didn't push. Not yet, but the hearing room, it had changed. Completely. The energy had shifted from spectacle to consequence. Outside, cable news anchors were visibly stunned on live TV. Headlines had already been updated. Patel, we followed a playbook, confirms 5 involved in off-record comms. Representative Crockett presses for names. At a middle school library in Spokane, Washington, a civics teacher paused her lesson and pulled up the live stream. This, she told her class, is what government oversight is supposed to look like. Back in the chamber, Jasmine leaned forward slowly. We're going to pause here, Mr. Patel, not because you've said enough, but because there's one more document I need to enter into the record, and I want you to hear it fully. She nodded to Brenda, who tapped a keyboard. On the screen behind them appeared a screenshot. Black background, white font. A text chain between Patel and someone saved in his phone as W Staffline. The message read, "Make sure we don't mention it in email. If she asks, deny it. She won't follow up." Patel stared at it for a long time. Then he said something that caught everyone off guard. "I didn't write that." Jasmine didn't blink. "It came from your phone. It was spoofed," he said quickly. "Or maybe, I don't know. I never sent that." Brenda pulled up a metadata report. We trace the phone's unique identifier to your device. The time matches your login to the committee's secure portal. Patel rubbed his face. This is insane. I swear I didn't. Then help us understand who did, Jasmine said. Silence again. I want a lawyer, he said. You already have one. I want another one. Chairman DuPont leaned forward, gavel in hand. Then we're suspending the hearing for legal consultation. Everyone started talking at once. Reporters, aides, committee members. The room erupted, not with shouting but a stunned reaction. Brenda leaned toward Jasmine. That wasn't the most explosive thing, she whispered. I know, Jasmine replied. That's next. But as the room cleared, news outlets scrambled for the final document. A single recording Jasmine hadn't mentioned yet, one that would raise questions far beyond this hearing. By the time Patel's legal team requested a suspension of testimony, the media machine had already roared to life. Not just social media. Those platforms were already ablaze, but cable news, radio, political podcasts, even morning talk shows. The story wasn't about a policy hearing anymore. It was about a man trying to claw his way out of something he could no longer control. CNN had a panel on standby. MSNBC brought in 2 constitutional law experts. On Fox News, the framing was different, more cautious. But even they couldn't ignore the storm Patel had walked straight into. The clips were too clear. The evidence is too plain. It was no longer a left or right debate. It was about honesty, power, and consequences. Outside the building, protesters started arriving with signs. Some supported Crockett, others demanded a deeper investigation. Cameras pivoted, police set up temporary barricades. The scene felt less like Capitol Hill and more like a courthouse on the day of a verdict. Inside, Patel's team huddled in a side room. One of his aides whispered updates. There's audio now. They've got it cued. She hasn't even played it yet. Patel sat still. For the first time all day, he didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, listening to the muffled chatter from the hallway. His lawyer leaned over, voice low. You've got one chance to explain it, before they do. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett remained seated in the chamber. She was reviewing a printout of the transcript tied to the audio file. Her lips were pressed tight, not in anger, but in focus. Brenda leaned in. Are we sure we want to play it now? We hold it until the chairman reconvenes, Jasmine said. He's going to want it on the record. It took nearly an hour to get everyone back in their seats. Members filed in slowly, avoiding eye contact with cameras. The hearing room wasn't packed. It was brimming. Journalists were now shoulder to shoulder. Even staff from neighboring offices were slipping in through side doors, pretending to be on official business just to see what was about to happen. Chairman DuPont tapped the gavel 3 times. We resume today's hearing with additional evidence submitted by Representative Crockett. Proceed. Jasmine adjusted her microphone. What you're about to hear was recovered from an internal training session held over Zoom last year. Mr. Patel, while you were serving as a senior advisor, you hosted this meeting, and during this session you spoke about internal practices for communication and protocol. Is that correct? Patel didn't answer. The chairman spoke again. Mr. Patel, please respond. Patel's voice was flat. If you say it's from a session, I won't deny it. Good, Jasmine said, because we clipped a specific portion. It lasts 45 seconds. She nodded to Brenda. The room darkened slightly as the audio clip began to play. Patel's voice filled the space, recorded, casual, and far more confident than the man now sitting silently under the lights. Keep comms clean. If you've got anything that could even look like it crosses the line, send it through a signal. Never email. And if anyone asks later, deny knowledge unless you're backed into a corner. A gasp. Not a dramatic one, but the kind you hear when people suddenly realize they've seen the tip of the iceberg and not the depth. Jasmine paused, letting the words land. Brenda clicked again. Another snippet played. We're not writing this stuff down. That's how people get pulled into hearings. You want cover? Use private channels. You want risk? Go formal. Your choice. Patel looked down. No fight left. His lawyer whispered something, but he didn't move. Chairman DuPont leaned forward. Mr. Patel, that voice, is it yours? Yes, he said quietly. Do you retract any of those statements? No. Jasmine leaned in. Then, let the record show. These were not just offhand remarks. These were instructions from someone with clearance, from someone who knew better. Patel said nothing. The chairman gavelled again. This hearing will enter an extended review phase. Testimony will be forwarded to the Oversight Committee, and legal counsel will coordinate with the Department of Justice. And just like that, the story shifted again, from scandal to legal matters. Outside, news trucks fired up their satellite feeds. Inside, Jasmine leaned toward Brenda. We weren't even looking for that clip, she whispered. It came in anonymously. Brenda blinked. Someone sent it? No, someone wanted it found. But that was the part that changed everything. Because whoever leaked the audio knew the storm it would cause and sent it anyway. While the media tore through every second of the hearing, while Patel's name trended next to phrases like cover-up and perjury, something else was happening beneath the surface. Quietly, deliberately. Pieces moving that most people would never see. It started 2 weeks earlier in a building just 4 blocks away from the Capitol. An aide named Melinda Cash, 28, sharp-eyed, always 2 steps ahead, had been working in the basement archive of the Intelligence Subcommittee's staff wing. Her job wasn't glamorous. Mostly, it involved cross-referencing old transcripts, flagging duplicate entries, and refiling years of clutter that no one else wanted to touch. But she had a habit. She listened. One afternoon, she'd overheard 2 staffers talking about a ghost drive, a pocket-sized USB no one could officially admit existed. They joked about it in passing. One of them even laughed. But Melinda didn't laugh. She noted the name, used staff line. She went back through older entries, tracing emails where that code name popped up in metadata. They weren't frequent, barely more than 4. But they all pointed to one inbox, Patel's. That was the thread she tugged, and when she did, the whole sleeve came apart. Melinda didn't tell anyone, not her supervisor, not her roommate. She just compiled what she could, quietly verified it, and placed a printout inside an unmarked envelope. It sat in her apartment for 4 days before she finally walked into Representative Crockett's local district office in Dallas on her day off and handed it to a man sitting at the front desk. All she said was, "Give this to her, no one else." Back in D.C., Jasmine didn't even know where the documents had come from at first. She just knew the markings were clean, original, unaltered. She had her legal staff vet every page. 3 specialists confirmed the documents hadn't passed through, standard Congressional servers. And then there was the audio file. That arrived separately, encrypted, an anonymous sender, no traceable metadata. But the voice was unmistakably Patel's, and the file was dated nearly a year before the hearing. Someone else wanted the truth out, but they weren't ready to reveal themselves. Now, in the aftermath of Patel's public collapse, Jasmine sat in her office across from a whiteboard covered with names, dates, arrows, and phone records. Brenda was pacing. If 5 people were involved and we've only confirmed Patel, who else is protecting this thing? There's no way he thought this through alone, Jasmine said. He had help, and not just from staffers. He mentioned a playbook. Somebody wrote it. Brenda turned. Do you think Devlin flips? If he thinks he's the only one left holding the bag? Yeah. Eventually, at that same moment in a brownstone near Arlington, a man sat alone at a desk. His name? Rob Devlin. Mid-40s. Worked in multiple departments. Over the years. Quiet reputation, not flashy.